Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity. I've spoken with a number of you privately on these kinds of subjects, so I appreciate the opportunity. My wife, my wife and I have been in Midland for 51 years, and we have voted for every school bond issue. This, however, we will vote against for 3 reasons. Central Park Elementary STEM School was the 2015 $125 million bond issue. Sadly, Central Park has a proficiency of 44%, and as a retired gallery scientist at Dow Corning, I know what STEM is, and 44% proficiency is not. This is an unfulfilled promise. Secondly, $0.285 billion is what you're asking for, and with interest, that's nearly $500 million. It's just simply too large. I do support a school north of the highway. We need that. There's 600, 700 students there. The third point is northeast, in my view, and the view of a construction engineer who walked through it, is that there are decades left in Northeast Intermediate, or Northeast Middle School, excuse me. The sad thing is that the base engineering data seems to be unavailable, which is astounding to me when you're going to spend $100 million on a building. Moving forward, Midland Public Schools inspiring excellence. We've talked, Penny, John, Phil isn't here, we've talked about proficiency in the past. My local school, Chestnut Hill, has the lowest proficiency at 43%. The highest is Seabird at 62%. This is a graphic, what has occurred since 2015. 63% proficiency for third graders in 2015. The low was 48% in 2023, and it's now 51%. That's surprising to me. But let's compare that to Hemeter Elementary in Saginaw Township. Hemeter Elementary has 82% proficiency. Webster Elementary in Livonia has 93% proficiency. This is on the same test, and the Michigan data is where all of this has come from. As you know, your primary responsibility is proficiency. Why is that? Well, 65% roughly of high school students do not graduate from college. They expect to have a career as well. But if they have 40% proficiency, no lawyer in Judge Lauterbach's office or at Hemlock Semiconductor or Blasey Electric, you wouldn't want to hire people. So we need to improve proficiency. That is your primary job, and you need to find out why others, the 10 that you follow, or 50 that you follow every year, why they have so much higher.
Thank you.
We need to do better.
Mr. Bondides.
Greetings. Last year, I put up a cartoon about how the various bonds were layering upon each other year by year. In January, Phil said that a plot of the real data was going to be put on the website. Did not happen. At the Central Intermediate auditorium presentation, I had a pleasant conversation with Ms. Ringgold, and she said she had seen that data. So I dug around, had a great conversation with Ms. Womack, and finally asked for Form 3881, your bond application form to Treasury. Thanks, Phil, for your lack of action. It provided a gold mine if you're watching. My wife had an interesting discussion with the state Treasury Department to understand that what your bond language really means. Your first line contains the verbiage, quote, issue its general unlimited tax bonds, unquote, which translates to, regardless of the circumstances, the property owners of MPS District are on the hook. The 3881 form anticipates that for the next 10 years, MPS will have access to an interest rate of 4.75%. Does anybody really believe this? We are in a recession, so it's doubtful we will have access to those low interest rates for a decade. Higher interest rates for Series 3 and 4 would dramatically increase the total cost of this bond and drive it well north of $500 million. And you have switched from 15-year bonds to 25-year bonds to keep the mills down, but at increased interest costs. So if you look at page 1 of what you have in front of you, that's for the video, that is the growth rate from your form. This scatter is supposed to tell us what the growth rate over the next 25 years is, which is 1.65%, the orange line on your handout. If you pull out 2003, 5, 6, and 9, the two big negatives and the two big positives, to be fair, the latter three is the inflation from the housing bubble and the global financial crisis. The rest of the data gives us a growth rate of 1.03, or only 62% of what you anticipate. As you layer the 2025 bond on top of 2015, you appear to be on a path of addiction to bonds covering foundational expectations like buses and roofs. The public is not ready to put their property in a perpetual bondage to your wish list. Finally, again from your paperwork, 2025 bond Series 1, you are going to charge a portion of the cost of the May election to the bond. So you are taking $71,000 reimbursement from the bond proceeds, and we will pay 25 years of interest, so it's over $121,000. While this may be legal, I am not happy paying for the privilege of being fleeced for 25 years. For the voters, your silence is your consent. Thank you.
Thank you. Renita. Good evening.
Good evening. Renita Bonadis. I've heard the presentation of this bond proposal both here and at several public venues. We have seen the graphic for the target utilization of 85%, showing how overcrowded our schools are, especially the K-5 buildings. So I took a look at page 95 of the 3881 that Joe mentioned. I found all of your 5-year projections for building capacities and enrollments at each of the buildings. This is where it got very interesting. Our current utilization at the K-5 schools is 93%. After we add this nice state-of-the-art educational facility for our north of the US 10 little learners, we will be at a 94% utilization rate. Wait, what? You mean we will spend approximately $91.5 million to build a new building and have a worse utilization rate for K-5 buildings? In fact, the new elementary shows a 98% utilization rate. So I looked at the projections for all of the buildings in the district. Our current utilization rate is 86% when comparing capacity to enrollment. Your projections show that the district utilization rate for all buildings will be 94% at the end of the projects. Wait, how is this possible? We are to support this bond proposal and go from 86% to 94% utilization rate. You told us 85% was the goal. How is this board okay with supporting and presenting this bond proposal to the taxpayers with a 94% utilization rate? You are asking the taxpayers to take on a $500 million debt for the next 34 years for this bond proposal. Let me fill in the gaps for the public. You are reducing the building capacity on all but one in the projections. In fact, there is a loss of 1,117 from the current buildings while adding 600 of capacity at the new elementary. So there is a net loss of 517 in capacity across the district. And the utilization rate, I remind you, is 98% at that new elementary. So why does it look like we are gaining nothing in reduced class sizes and simultaneously reducing our building capacities for our claimed increasing enrollment? Look to the non-mandated goal of a pre-K the district is forcing on the taxpayers. This is a desired program of some of your biggest business partners that we hear about at these meetings, like Dow. How did taxpayers providing K-12 education morph to building preschools? So you present some things you claim are the problem, but never tell us how these things will be better. I think it's because you aren't really fixing some of the main concerns of the community. This is a sleight of hand bond proposal that we will be paying on long after you are off the board. Again, please vote. Your silence is your consent. Thank you.